All right, today is June 12th of 2023, and I want to do something a little bit different. I wanted to talk a little bit about why I'm building the boat that I'm building, why the Diesel Duck 48. And, I've been dwelling on this for a number of years before I actually made the decision to start building this. Initially, I wanted a sailboat, a live-aboard sailboat, something big enough to live aboard, something, small enough that you could single hand if need be. But I also wanted a sailboat that had a little bit longer diesel range because I knew I was getting older and might not want to be sailing all the time. And that's kind of a tall order. There aren't too many of those out there. I mean, there are motor sailors out there, but they're few and far between, and a lot of them aren't in real great shape because I don't think there's too many of them being made anymore. Anyway, so I was originally thinking about sailboats, and I looked at lots and lots of different sailboats. And then I changed my mind and decided maybe I should go in the trawler category. Like I said, simply because I was getting old enough, I don't know if I wanted to sit outside in the elements all the time, and in the work involved with putting up sails and whatnot. So I started researching trawlers. And of course, one of the first ones that really caught my eye was the Grand Banks 42. It looked like a nice solid boat, and it is a nice solid boat. And I wanted to look at one up close. I also thought about DeFevers. Thought they looked like a pretty solid boat, and I believe they are. And I went down to Florida with a friend of mine in 2019, just before the pandemic started, and looked at some boats and looked at a Grand Banks 42. And boy, I was tempted. I really was. But the problem with the 42, the Grand Banks, and most of these production trawlers is the same. They aren't very adept at sea. So they have twin engines, most of them, which for a long-range cruiser, if you want to cruise long-range, twin engines aren't a very good option. Little bitty rudders behind each prop, and if one engine goes out, then your maneuverability is severely compromised, and the boat wants to crab through the water, and your fuel efficiency is going to be horrible. And there's just a lot of things about the twin engine trawlers that aren't real desirable, and the props and the rudders aren't protected. And you look at something like this, a design like this here now. I mean, look at this huge keel it's got under it. The prop is way up here, protected. Great big, transom hung rudder back here that, a whale could try to take a bite out of and probably not damage it. You could ground the thing on rocks and probably, providing you can pull away, you'd be all right. There's going to be a 3/8" steel keel shoe along the whole length of the keel. So, something like this is a lot more robust. It's designed to go in the open ocean. It's designed to cross oceans. But it's just, compared to production boats of any sort, sailboats or otherwise, they don't have the oomph to them to make you feel real safe in them. I was watching a video. Catamarans are really, really popular now, and I get that. I mean, there's nothing better if you're sitting in a harbor or a bay or whatever, anchored off a beach somewhere. There's probably nothing better than a catamaran. But at sea, I get that they don't heel over like a sailboat, but then we're not usually going to be heeled over in this thing either. But the catamarans have kind of an unusual motion because the hulls are so far spaced apart that it gives them kind of that churning motion like you're in a washing machine or something. So they aren't very comfortable at sea. Now, I know with modern routing and stuff, you can get around a lot of that. And for most people that aren't crossing oceans, cats are probably, that's probably the ticket. It probably is. But the problem with catamarans is they float on the surface. They have to be lightweight. It's not like a boat like this that's designed to, have half the boat in the water. It's a totally different dynamic between a catamaran and a full displacement, heavy displacement boat like this. So the catamarans, while nice, I don't really believe they're for the most part, intended for crossing oceans. I mean, I've watched a lot of videos and heard a lot of stories about catamarans that didn't take much damage and sunk. That material, that fiberglass in the hull is pretty darn thin. Even in most production monohulls, the fiberglass is pretty thin in it. Yeah. I mean, here we're going to have 1.5 inches of 2x material over everything, and we're going to have 1/2 inch of plywood, or 3/8 at minimum, a plywood layer over top of that. Not to mention all the beefy frames, and yeah, there's just no comparison. I know George, the designer of the boat, George Bueller, commented about that too. You know, he says I'll play chicken with a production boat any day of the week, and we'll see who survives. And I agree with the way these boats are designed and then built. Yeah, they should take about anything. And providing you maintain them properly, they should last a long time too, because if you fiberglass sheath this thing in epoxy and fiberglass, you're going to have the advantages of a fiberglass boat, you know, the low maintenance and you know, dryness of a fiberglass hull, with the durability and strength of a wood hull. So yeah, anyways, so in my decisions, I went down to Florida, looked at the Grand Banks 42, was really tempted, and then all of those things just were in the back of my mind. It's still not a real long-range trawler. Hatteras made a long-range cruiser. Like the DeFevers, there were some nice DeFevers out there. Who else? The prominent one. Now you know who I'm talking about. The expensive ones. The Nordhavens. Thank you. The Nordhavens are good boats, but they aren't really fuel efficient either. And of course, they're multi-million-dollar boats for the most part. So, you know, I was limited in there just wasn't any production boats really out there that met the specifications that I was looking for. Something that was relatively fuel efficient and long range capable and safe, you know, in a storm. And I get it, again, we've got, you know, forecasts, and we can get forecasts out in the middle of the ocean now over satellites, so that helps. It certainly does. But anyway, so all those things kind of came into play when I was trying to decide on what I wanted to do for a boat. And I almost bought a Grand Banks. I did. I almost bought a Grand Banks. And I decided that it just didn't quite check all the boxes. Now, the Diesel Duck has a sail plan. So you can sail it in the event of an emergency, and that's what I plan to do. I really don't plan on putting the sails up and sailing on a regular basis. I plan on carrying, you know, a minimal sail complement just to get you somewhere if your engine fails or your drivetrain fails. Now, the chances of that happening are pretty slim. I got a really reliable engine. The running gear here is well protected. Great big keel, the whole length of the boat. The prop is up off the bottom, you know, well protected by the keel. Yeah, it's unlikely that you're going to have issues if you maintain these things properly. But if you do, you will want some way to get home. And I considered going with wing engines and maybe an electric drive over the, or hydraulic even. But in the end, I decided probably just to stick with a sail plan. And I may not even do the sail plan, put sails on the boat, unless I intend to cross an ocean. You know, if I'm just going to do a run to the Bahamas for a season or whatever, I may not put the sails on it. You can probably pay somebody to tow you back in even from the Bahamas. So, that's kind of my thinking on the boat, why I went with the 48, the Diesel Duck 48. I read Robert Beebe's Passage Maker, and I entirely agreed with what he said in that book. And this boat is very, very similar to Beebe's Passage Maker. Very similar. Almost the same size and weight and same, you know, engine and propulsion, and I don't remember if he had a wing engine. He might have had a wing engine or something in there for emergencies. He didn't have a sail plan on it, I don't think. But yeah, so that was the thought process. And then, of course, the pandemic rolled around. Just right after I got back from Florida, early 2020, the pandemic rolled around. And I've been looking, I'd read George's book on long-range trawlers he calls them, because they're based off of the trolling boats, West Coast trolling boats. So I read his book too, and read his boat building book. Then I bought his boat building book and read that. And the things that he said just made a lot of sense to me. It kind of resonated with me. And I decided with the pandemic, the pandemic's going to be around for a while, so yeah, let's go ahead and build us a boat. I mean, there are some diesel ducks that come up for sale occasionally, but half of the fun of this, or half of the, I don't know if you want to call it fun or not, but is building it, is the journey of building the boat. And then the satisfaction, once you get this thing in the water, is going to be astronomical. I mean, it's satisfying just looking at things here now the way it is. I mean, it started with nothing, and now we've got this massive chunk of wood and, steel and fiberglass. I mean, it's something that's, unless you've done it, you'd never understand, I don't think. But so half of this project is the journey itself, is building the boat. We'll see what happens after I get it built and get it in the water. We'll see how much I enjoy it. Maybe I won't even like it. Maybe I'll wind up selling it to somebody for $1 after I used it for a couple years. We'll see. But I suspect I'll like it. I've always enjoyed the water and always liked being around the water, even though I am landlocked more or less here in Iowa. We do have a river on either side of the state, the Missouri on one side and the Mississippi on the other side. So, yeah, we're not totally devoid of getting to the ocean from here. But yeah, that was kind of the thought process that I went through. I wanted a boat that was seaworthy, more or less stable without having to go a lot of weird, not odd, but stabilizers. Geez, you can spend what, $60,000, $80,000 on stabilizers for a boat if you want to. Yeah, that's crazy. But I'm thinking if I do put some sort of stabilizers, it would be paravanes. And I'm going to make that when I finish the boat out, I'm going to make that a possibility. I mean, I'll make provisions for that. So I'll have some attachments points already predetermined for paravanes. Whether I need them or not, I don't know. George seemed to think that if you had problems with the boat rolling too much, you could put some sail up to slow that down. And I'm sure that helps. And then again, too, you can wait for weather windows until, the seas are... I'm not going to be in any hurry to get anywhere, I don't think. So, yeah. If I have to wait a week or 2 weeks or whatever somewhere, so be it. But anyway, again, that's kind of the process of what I went through with deciding to go with this boat. Started out as a sailboat, progressed to a trawler, and then eventually I settled on the diesel duck Trawler design by George Bueller. And I'm pretty happy I did. It's not going to be the perfect boat for, dropping anchor in a harbor and having fun off of. I get that. I mean, it's going to be difficult to get up. It's going to be a long ways to get up to the deck. Getting, a tender up and off there is going to be more difficult because it's higher. It doesn't have sugar scoops on the back that you can go plop into the water right off the boat. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things about it. I mean, it's the cabin area is almost all down in the boat, kind of like a sailboat. So you're not up there with picture windows. But again, you can't have everything. Every boat's compromised. If you want a seagoing boat that's capable in the ocean, that's one of the prices you pay for it. Yet it still has enough room. So why not build a 42 or whatever footer, or a 41 or a 38 diesel duck? Again, I wanted something big enough that I could live on and be comfortable living on. And I think this fits the bill. I don't know how many crew I'll have with me at any given time. I'm sure there will be a number of people from time to time, so I wanted to make that a possibility. Just like to have crew. If I want to cross an ocean, really, you need a crew for that. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of volunteers that would jump at the chance to cross an ocean as a crew member. So, yeah, I wanted the boat big enough to handle a crew, cross oceans if we want to. But we'll see. And as for the name of the boat, if you read the title up there, it's Io. What the hell's Io? Well, Io is one of the moons of Jupiter. And there's a couple of reasons why I chose it. Well, several maybe. One is that it's just kind of cool, Io. I mean, it's a cool name, isn't it? Yeah. Another one is the fact that when I was 25 years ago, I used to build some really big high-performance rockets. Some of them were even liquid-fueled or hybrid, and really cool rockets. And I was giving them names of the different moons around Jupiter, Ganymede and Callisto. And the four main ones would be Io and Europa. Well, Europa sounds too much like Europe, so you don't want to call your boat Europe. So I had named two of my rockets, Ganymede and Callisto, and the next one would have been Io. So I decided to carry that on with naming the boat Io. But probably the most important reason I named the boat Io was because it's easy. If you ever have to phonetically spell your boat's name, like you almost always have to do when you're coming into port, when you're talking to the Port Authority, you've heard some of these boat names, like, I gave up work for drinking on a boat. That's the name of their boat, or, just, you know what I'm talking about. All the weird names people give. And you got to spell that to people phonetically. Oh my God. Think about that. I'm on the radio now talking to the Coast Guard. Yep, this is Io. Oh, could you spell that for me? Indigo Oscar. That's it. Io. It's a word. It's a name. It's 2 letters. I even looked up to see if a 2-letter name of a boat was appropriate or even legal. And it was. So, Io. Io it is. Io was actually a princess in, Greek mythology? So, yeah, that's appropriate. But anyway, that's a little bit of the history of how we got to where we are right now.